Hey, everybody, and welcome to Crunching Your Growth. I'm your host, Phil Masiello, and today's guest is someone who knows what it means to push boundaries in life and business. From serving in the U.S. Air Force to flying commercially, broadcasting stories around the globe, and now disrupting the aviation industry with his startup, Proper Pilots, Timothy Tweet has lived a remarkable journey of grit and innovation. So today he's here to share how he's simplifying flight training and what we can all learn from his entrepreneurial journey. So let's dive in. Let's hear a little bit about his background, how he got to where he is, why he's doing what he's doing. And he's got a really interesting past. So let's bring him in. And Timothy, thank you for joining us. And it's great. It's great seeing you. Thanks for taking the time.
It's absolutely great to be here, Phil. Thank you. Thank you so much.
So yeah, why don't you take us through sort of the progression of your life? I know you were a police officer, you were in the Air Force, you did all these different things. How'd you get to this part?
Absolutely. Straight out of high school, I went straight into the big blue, the U.S. Air Force, and there's nothing that'll speed you up quite as much as as the United States military. They definitely taught me how much you can do in a single day if someone is screaming at you to do it. I mean, when I got out of the military, I just knew that the amount of hours that you could work towards someone's dream, if it's your dream and you work that hard for it, you're going to achieve it. There's just no doubt.
Yeah. There's a movie. I can't remember what the name of it was. This young guy goes into the military and he has trouble because he's always questioning everything. And then, he keeps getting in trouble with his teachers. Then he goes in the military. And then finally he has a breakthrough where he's all of a sudden becomes like the perfect recruit in the Army. And the drill instructor says, "What did you do?" He said, "I stopped thinking. I actually just did what you told me to do, and it seems to work out. And now everything seems to be going fine." And the guy says, "You're the perfect soldier."
They just start to fall in place when you're in the right place at the right time. You talked a little bit about my journey through careers. When I got out of the Air Force, I became a police officer. I didn't really love it. I didn't love being a police officer, but I got really obsessed with the role. And I was kind of always on, and I couldn't help myself from like, I got to get the next guy. And so I just couldn't turn it off. I'm blessed to have an amazing wife who really pushed me. You love flying. You love going places. You love seeing things and meeting people. You need to chase that dream. Like I know that we're settled and we're comfortable, but you got to be happy too. So I was blessed to put in my resignation and throw it all to the wind, so to speak, and try to become a pilot. And I went from never having flown an airplane to being a commercial multi-engine instructor in less than a year. And it was a wild journey, and it was a lot of hard work, but really coming from that hard disciplined nature and just like, look, I'm going to get this done. This is what I want to do. And once I came out of it, I was barely making any money as a flight instructor, trying to support my wife and my daughter. And I was like, there's got to be a better way. So I made a spreadsheet that was the cost of living versus the average hourly instructor wage. And I moved to Cambridgeville, Kentucky. It was number one on the list. And I started a flight school. As soon as I did that, I realized that the systems and the software that flight schools are currently run on, it's mostly like paperwork and legacy desktop software, and everybody hates it. Like I have all these flight school owners that I call and I talk to, and they're like, I got to go do 3 hours of, mindless paperwork or mindless clicking through this application that barely works. And it just makes their days and their lives harder and less fun. And so we made Proper Pilots to streamline it. And, when we ran into that problem, I figured it'd be cheaper to solve it than just to struggle through it.
Yeah. That's surprising. You were in the Air Force, but you didn't learn to fly in the Air Force?
I got flown around. I was actually a combat cameraman or a photojournalist. So I was constantly in all these different countries. I was in about 120 countries before I turned 21, which was amazing. And I got addicted to traveling. And finally they were like, okay, well, you can promote to a staff sergeant, but you're going to have to just sit at this desk and teach people how to do what you've been doing the last 6 years. And I was like, I got to go play outside, man. You can't lock me up in here. And so I got out. I did a transition program to become a police officer. I was a crime scene photographer, that kind of jazz, and it just didn't really click with me. I don't. I have a I have a hard time pulling people over for things that I would have done. So like maybe like a Cali stop at a stop sign. I'm just like, he didn't like no one was getting hurt, but that's the wrong answer if you're a police officer.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. that's that's quite a story. I know every pilot that I know loves to fly. They just love it, and I am not. I have never had the desire to become a pilot. I I'm fine on an airplane. I only sit in the aisle seats. The smaller the plane gets, the worse I get. And my wife has a pilot's license, and I just can't go up in like those smaller planes. It just I can't do it. And I know people love it. They go up and they have no problem. There's a channel on YouTube. This makes it worse. There's a channel on YouTube where this guy analyzes crashes, small, medium, and large, and 99.9% of the time it comes down to pilot error. And uh, even if something happens, like an engine falls off, he'll say it's pilot error. You're supposed to check your machine before you go up. So that doesn't help me with my, it's not that I have a fear of flying, but I just would prefer it if it were just a big jet where there's multiple pilots up there.
I enjoy the dichotomy between the picture of the airline pilot in the the big bus 787 or something driving 300 people around, and he's looking out his window and he sees the young certified flight instructor in a Cessna 152, and then they both have a little thought bubble over them where it's like, man, I wish I was flying that.
Yeah.
Because the CFIs are just dying for money, and they want a career and they want a livable wage. And then the airline pilot, he has the money and the livable wage, but he just wants to have the freedom to kind of go do a Chandelle or go do kind of break off the rails that you have to be on in an airliner. And of course, that makes it safer, and that makes it the really really low crash rate on airlines because it's so regulated. Um, but really, if you give that airline pilot a little two-seater plane, he's going to whip it around and have fun. I've had the pleasure of taking up a former UPS pilot who,
Yeah.
he's flying on rails from country to country all over the world. And then he was looking at buying my plane. So I was like, let's take it up. Let's see what you got. And I mean, he was ripping this thing all around because you could tell that it was just pent up frustration on he doesn't actually get to hand fly that big 787 that often. So when he got the chance, I mean, it was like he was on a dirt bike. He was just tearing it up.
Yeah. So explain proper pilots a little bit, and what it does, why it does, and why people like it.
Yeah, proper pilots just takes all of the things that you have to do as a student pilot, as a certified flight instructor, or as a flight school owner, and it makes it a couple of taps on your phone. I know everyone has this little computer magic black mirror in their pocket. And so I just decided to put all of the admin tasks that they don't want to do at the end of the day, at the end of flying, and make it as simple as possible for them to just click through a couple pages, log all the necessary information, check all the boxes, as it were, and get on with their day. It allows everybody to spend more time doing the part that is actually learning, actually teaching, and actually makes money. Because as a flight school owner, you're only making money when that bird's flying. When your CFI is stuck in the office filling out all the paperwork for all the flights he did, you're losing money. So is the CFI, and you're going to have to charge the students more because of it. So proper pilots just streamlines all that, and because it streamlines it so much, it saves the student pilot money. It lowers the cost of training by about $20,000 if you go from zero time to commercial pilot with proper pilots. It raises instructor pay, and our flight school owners even make more money because they spend more time billable hours, really.
And that's because all the paperwork is because when a student pilot is getting trained, they have to keep track of everything, correct?
Well, I mean, we want to have pilots that we're tracking we want to know exactly where they're deficient and where they're really, really good the whole time so that we can hyper personalize that training. And Proper Pilots brings that into easy numbers. We take all that data, we push it together, and we go, this is where you're really at in a nice, easy, digestible number. We don't overdo you with facts and data. We just try to give you the simplified single number that really matters to you. And because of that, people really like it.
But they still need, in order to get your commercial pilot's license, right? You need to have all that data tracked, right?
Yeah, that data has to be somewhere. If you're at a 141 school like a university, there are regulations in the 14 Code of Federal Regulations that say you have to have that information for 5 years. And yeah, so it's very important that we're keeping it. But most people, they're gathering it, but they're not using it to their advantage. They're just gathering it for the sake of gathering it. And we allow you to gather it and then learn from it on top of the learning you're doing in the actual airplane. So it's just a win-win-win.
That's great. I don't know anything about flying, but I do know that I knew just enough to know that all that data and all that information, you have to keep it in order to get your commercial pilot's license.
We don't let anyone fly planes. We used to, and then something happened, and then we stopped.
Yeah.
Sorry, that was a joke in bad taste.
Oh. No, but I mean, all that manual paperwork that the flight instructor's filling out, that the school is filling out, that even the student pilot is filling out, which is time consuming, all has to be kept somewhere, and they need it for their commercial pilot's license. So you're just essentially creating the database, making it easy to put the input into the database. Because I would imagine some of the things that they're writing are repetitive. It's the same
Oh,
thing.
oh
Number
yeah.
of hours that the person did, their what do they call those, touch and goes or whatever. Did they do this? Did they do this?
I mean, I'd love to say that a student pilot never makes the same mistake twice, but I'd be lying out of my teeth if I said it. You could almost see on a first flight with a student pilot, like, oh, you're going to have a problem with this all the way through your training, and there's nothing wrong with the person. There's a million things, and you got to prioritize your focus, and you got to scan, you got to rotate, you got to think about different things at different times.
Yeah.
And we all have blind spots, and we're just there to help you fill those blind spots in and make it easier to identify them.
Yeah. Yeah. That's pretty interesting. So it's just came out of your love of flying.
Absolutely, and there's nothing you could do to get me to stop flying a little two-seater coupe convertible like the one behind me. This is actually modeled after a Grumman American, and that's why I started my flight school with. I was a bar manager, and I got 5 people to drink enough to give me money up front for their pilot's license. And then I bought an airplane, and I got them all their license without charging them another dollar, and that's where the whole flight school started.
Is that right? That's great. How long has it been? How long have you had the flight school?
Goodness, that would be 4 months and no, sorry, 4 years and 6 months.
Wow. So you've made a lot of progress in 4 years and 6 months.
We've graduated a good amount of students. I think we have 133 commercial pilots, and I actually have 33 students across the East Coast. I used to be a high school teacher. I forgot to mention that. So they call me Mr. Tweet. Mr. Tweet, how do I do what you did, right? And I go, I'll help you, and I can call you, and I can talk to you, and I can help you set up this flight school so that you can make a livable wage as an instructor by owning your own flight school. And Proper Pilots really got birthed out of the fact that I can't mentor 129,000 CFIs like there are in the United States. I can only do one at a time. But Proper Pilots flight training system allows me to kind of mold the flight training industry into a way that's more profitable for everybody involved.
Oh, so you're actually, in addition to the paperwork and sort of the organization and the data and taking away those tasks, you're actually helping the other flight instructors with figuring out how to run their business.
Absolutely. I mean, it's a low margin business.
I can imagine.
You have to obsess over making your plane as efficient and as cheap to run as possible. so that you can keep that number down, so you can keep attracting students, and your students become your CFIs, and your CFIs train more students. And it's kind of a pyramid scheme, so to speak, that way, because I'm just training CFIs who are then going to have to train more students to be CFIs and get more airplanes to train more students to make more CFIs. But I mean, even with that effect, the Federal Aviation Administration tells us we're going to be 600,000 commercial pilots short worldwide in 2030. So, I mean, this system has to scale, and we just found a way to make it scale more naturally, and it's really been growing like a wildfire. We started with one school in our beta test just to say, hey, does this actually work? Do people like this? That was July 4th. We have 107 users today, less than 60 days afterwards, and we haven't really released it to anyone. This is just flight school owners and CFIs calling each other, and they're like, you got to start using properpilots.com because I'm making more money and my students are saving money, and you got to get on it.
So how are you scaling it? That's just word of mouth? I mean, you've done no marketing, no advertising, no nothing.
So I try to go out on LinkedIn. I try to go out on Instagram. We actually were blessed enough to win the Vote Awards, which is kind of a regional recognition for startups in Indiana and Kentucky. And really, I mean, I outreach, but we're just in our beta until we launch our MVP or our actual product. We're not crazy worried. It's completely free to use. We just want to make this better for everybody, and it's still helping us make money because my flight schools are using it. So the driver wasn't, I'm going to go make a butt ton of money and I'm going to change the industry. It was like, I'm going to make my flight school run as efficiently as it possibly could. And then I turned around and was like, I guess everybody kind of wants that. And so I started sharing it.
Yeah. So why do you think people have taken to it so rapidly?
Really, I mean, it's really easy to sell free, but I think over and above all, a lot of people interested in doing a startup or doing their own company, coming up with their own tech solution. We throw buzzwords around like maybe like product market fit, and when you have it, you have it. It's like, oh, people are snatching this out of my hands. I'm not selling it. I'm not pushing it on people. People are taking it out of my hands as fast as I could possibly put it back in my hands again.
It's funny you say product market fit. I wrote an article because obviously, in addition to the show, in addition to Crunch Growth Agency, I also do coaching. And the number one reason startups fail is not lack of money, and it's not lack of trying. It's not having product market fit, because entrepreneurs get enamored with their idea, and they start pushing it thinking that everybody's going to be enamored with the idea. And sometimes they're not, because there's no product market fit. It's just something you think is a great idea, right? But not everybody else does. So it's amazing. But you're 100% right. When you get product market fit and people realize that it's helping them, it starts to go like wildfire.
That feels a little bit like having a baby to me. It's everyone thinks they have the cutest baby in the world, and to everyone they do probably have the cutest baby in the world. But it's really easy to fall in love with a little tiny human that kind of looks like you, and maybe not everybody thinks it's the cutest baby in the world. And I think a lot of founders do get a little stuck on that, where, wow, I had just a brilliant idea. I mean, we never really felt that way with Proper Pilots. It was just, I built this to run my flight school because I didn't want to pay $1,200 a month for a really clunky system. I was like, for $1,200 a month, I'll just build one that's better.
Yeah.
And I did that. And then I was like, oh, my students are graduating and they're like, hey, can I run that system that you were using? And I'm like, well, I mean, we didn't really build it for that, but maybe we should.
Yeah. It's funny because there are a lot of systems out there. I was just having this conversation with another person the other day, just about systems, not related to your industry, but there's a product out there run by SAP that is sort of inventory control, and it's it's a back end system for big companies, and everybody uses it. It's like the biggest system out there, but it's terrible. Everybody uses it because they feel like they have to, but nobody really knows how to use it, and it's horrible. And there are these new systems that are out today that are so much more streamlined because SAP is expensive and it takes forever to learn, but it's been out there for decades, and and it never really gives you the accurate information. When you ask people for inventory reports and things, it's very convoluted. But there are so many systems out there, even like CRMs, customer relationship management tools. There's old ones that cost a fortune, and then there's things like Go High Level that is fairly inexpensive and very flexible. So technology has to keep up with the times, and a lot of times it doesn't. And I think that we have modern technology today that can make things much more flexible and streamlined. And you can do things with low code, no code. You can do things with AI that you couldn't do 5 years ago, 10 years ago, that are lower in the cost, making things much more efficient. So,
When we're talking about crunching growth, it sounds like we're talking about crunching data. And our ability as humans to crunch data in the last 3 years has exponentially exploded. I mean, I can type into Chat GPT to crunch hours of data for me that would take days or weeks in the past. And now it's just like, if it takes 10 seconds, I'm like, what's going on? Why is this taking so long? And our ability as humans to understand the summaries that are coming from that crunch data is like, yes, all that data on pages or lines and just endless amounts of information, it's already out there. We just aren't really optimized as humans to consume it. But AI is specifically created to consume that data and give you kind of a human insight of like, you might find this helpful from all of these, like we can't read a billion numbers, but we could learn from it if we could. And now we can.
it's I'm glad you brought that up because it's true. In my mind, in my world, there was actually, I don't know if you follow me on LinkedIn, but I did a guy's podcast, and we were talking about this very thing in data and growth. And to me, crunching data and crunching growth are the same thing. Data lays out the path for growth. And we were early adopters of AI back 6 years ago, 7 years ago. And a lot of people were using it in marketing for creating content, writing blog posts and things like that. And we weren't. We tapped into the place where I saw it first was when we took on a new client or even existing clients. When you're doing advertising across multiple platforms, DSPs, Google, Meta, whatever, there's huge amounts of data, so much data that they don't even know what to do with it. But we took this product that was very big at the time, and we put all that data in there. And within 20 minutes, it came out with a clear path of what was wrong with the ads that were running, how they missed the target, and what the target needed to be, where we were getting the best returns, and how to move it forward. So to me, like you just said, crunching data, to me, crunching that data is crunching growth. So that's where the whole thing really started. But we've been using AI for about six years, and we fully integrated it into our business in different ways. But most of it is not around building ads or building videos. It's around data. So
I mean, at the end of the day, we're just a product of what we know, where we've been, and things that we learn. And AI is able to crunch that data to turn. I mean, when you talk about growth, maybe you're talking about personal growth. Well, that just means that you're learning. And when you're able to crunch data, you're able to learn so much faster from those mistakes because it's not like just one data point that really made an impact that you remembered and you grew from it. Instead, it's able to take all of the other data points that maybe you didn't really value at the time, and it's able to show you, hey, there were some learning moments in here, and that unlocks personal growth, business growth, and just all sorts of growth. I don't think that it replaces humans really in any huge meaningful way, but it absolutely accelerates our ability to grow as people and to learn. And it would be impossible to have a startup or have a foundation or start your own business completely in a void lack of human. I mean, I've had amazing mentors and support from the community in Louisville. I mean, people don't talk about the startup scene in Kentucky or the Midwest. I like to say silly things like it's easier to bootstrap a business when everybody's wearing boots. Like the cost of living here is so much cheaper that making a mistake is so much cheaper, and you're gonna make mistakes.
Oh,
You're
God.
gonna, and not having to pay through the nose through those mistakes really allows you to grow at a faster clip. And using AI to learn from every data point instead of just the ones you remember, you're gonna learn at a faster clip. And the person who learns the fastest is the person who wins the fastest.
I again, I coach entrepreneurs, and I tell them all. I think, and I'm guilty of this myself, and that's why I know what I'm talking about. My first business, the first business I started when I got done with college, it was a disaster. It was a disaster, and of my own making. Had nothing. The business itself was sound. It was a retail store. The traffic was sound. We were getting sales. The place was run horribly, and I still to this day feel sorry for everyone who worked for me because I was an awful leader. I was an awful leader. I was a terrible manager of process, and I I tell everybody that I had this, and I know that there's a lot of entrepreneurs that do this. I had this impression that I'm the entrepreneur, I'm the guy who came up with the idea, therefore I'm the guy who should have all the answers. And no one person can have all the answers. It's impossible. And that mentality, that thought process really is what destroyed the business because I couldn't transfer knowledge effectively. I wasn't leading effectively. And it was just utter chaos every day. And I wound up selling the business after about 3 years. And I took the money and went to graduate school, not because I needed more education, but I needed to think differently. And I needed a break, and I needed to be around people who thought differently. And so, and then I got involved with this other retail company in which we helped scale and then blew it up. But I still carry that with me today. And I talk to entrepreneurs about it. And I say, you're not going to have all the answers, and you don't want to have all the answers, and you're going to make mistakes, and it's okay to make mistakes. What's not okay is to keep making the same mistake over and over again. Make new ones, because if you make new mistakes, you're learning more things. You cannot learn, you cannot grow if you're not making mistakes. If everything is perfect and everything is going according to plan, you're doing something wrong. I'm sorry. You know, I have never in my life, I have probably seen over, I would say, 10,000 business plans, over 10,000 spreadsheets, over 10,000 projections in my lifetime. And I have never seen one business that actually followed the plan and followed the spreadsheet and did, because everything changes. And I'll give you another example of this whole thing. It's about data points and it's about everything. We have a client, we've been working with them for about 8 years. They have a new product that's innovative. Um, and they don't know anything about e-commerce. And the product is getting into retail and it's in and e-commerce as well. And every week they question us about like e-commerce numbers. What number is the most important? And we keep saying to them, one number is not important. It's the creation of all these numbers because each one has an effect. If your spend on ads affects your cost per acquisition, your conversion rate on your site affects your cost per acquisition. So all these different things affect each other. So you have to look at your top 10 or 15 metrics to get an understanding. And they really have a hard time understanding that because they're all looking for what's the one number. And you're going, okay, if you want to put one number, it's sales, but they have to be profitable sales. And so we try and explain it to them. And when we show them the numbers that we deal with on their behalf, their heads explode because they're looking across these lines going, and we're saying, look, we have tools to analyze this, but if you had to do this, manually, your head would explode.
Yeah, to bring it back to AI just for a minute, if you look when you type in something, you prompt ChatGPT, and maybe you hit the think longer button or whatever they're doing, and it's like, well, I'm looking at this resource, I'm looking at this resource, and it's going through thousands and thousands of websites and just millions of different lines of
Sure.
information. You need to do the same thing in your life. You need to have a network of people like I found here in Louisville through the awesome startup community right here in the Midwest, where you can bounce ideas. Because you're right. If you think you're always right, or you think the first thing that comes to your mind is right, why don't you take a little bit of a header from AI? It is never just picking one resource and going, this is the ultimate resource. It's always back checking through all this, and you need to build that network for you to be able to do that. There might be a marketing guy or a salesperson or a ex-founder or a person that exited for a ton of money that understands this better, and you need to make sure that you're open and you're respectful and you're nice to everyone you meet, so that when you have questions for that specific person, you have that resource to pull that information from. Because otherwise, you're not using what everyone else that is winning is using.
Yeah, it's true. I tell you know, I was speaking at a conference with entrepreneurs back in February or March, and I opened it up and I started talking. They introduced me, and some people knew me from the books that I've written and all. But I said, I founded 10 businesses in my lifetime, and everybody goes, "Whoa, that's impressive." And I said, "Only 4 have been successful. The other the other 6 weren't." And that's to me um, why I'm an effective coach and why I'm effective at leading Crunch Growth is because I have all of that history of what works, what doesn't work, because they were all in the same consumer product, e-commerce, direct advertising, marketing world. And so I say, I know what's going to work now. I know what's not going to work because I've wasted the millions of dollars to find out what doesn't work. And, you're going to benefit from that. So you're right that you need people around you that know what they're doing, that know what's coming around the corner, that can point you in the direction. I will never ever tell an entrepreneur when they come to me that they have a terrible idea. Never. And I've heard some really terrible ideas, and and I'll never tell them right out it's a terrible idea. What I will tell them is you should look at this, 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 and this before you decide that that's what you're going to go after. And as soon as they start analyzing the market, really, they start to realize I have to adjust this. This isn't going to work. And some people, some don't. Some just put their head down and say, "No, you don't know what you're talking about." I go, "Okay, maybe I don't," because it's true. I probably don't know what I'm talking about. But I could never. I could coach you, for example, and I could help you with how you can get more clients when it comes time, right? But I could never sit there and say to you, that your business is flawed because I don't understand that. I don't understand pilots, don't understand how they think. I don't understand what they need, the tools they need. I can tell you I could definitely put together an automation system to use that you could use to go out and get 10,000 more flight schools signed up, but that'd be the extent of it. And I could probably help coach you through your entrepreneurial journey, but I don't understand pilots, so I couldn't help you with your business plan, your
I think
business
there's
planning.
no doubt that there's so much to learn from you for me. And you mentioned earlier, you say I've founded 10 companies, and then you say, wait, only 4 of them were successful. That's almost like, okay, you got to listen to this guy, because that's a more impressive number than I've. It is. You learn when you lose. If you failed 6 times and you're still at it, you know something that's going to be better. Like, it's just that's a way more impressive number to me when you say, no, I've learned 6 times and I've not learned 4 times. That's what success really looks like. And you learn some things through success, but you learn so much more through failure.
Oh, there's no question about it. And I learned that, sometimes and I'll be honest with you. I'll be 100% honest with you. Every time that I failed, it's really on me because it's something that either I got involved in a business that I knew nothing about, like fashion. I can barely dress myself, and I got involved in a fashion business, and why I don't know. I got involved. I got involved with like nutraceuticals and healthy eating, and I know a little bit about it, but I mean, just things like that. I for a period of time I thought, well, I'm a marketer, so I can market anything. And what I've learned is I can apply the fundamentals of marketing to anything. But if you don't understand who that customer is, how they think, what motivates them, I can't. Someone was talking to me the other day. I was successful in the beauty business. I was successful in the beauty business. And that was because my co founder was a supermodel, Carol. And so my role was to, you know, take care of the business, making sure that the products got produced at the right price and things like that, right? And my job was we were on the shopping channels, and we had our e-commerce, we were in Ulta Beauty and things like that. Her job was to really be the marketing end of it, the push. She was the face of the brand, and that worked. So I understood from her how women think about beauty, and we were able to be, successful for many, many years. But fashion, I didn't have anybody like that. We thought, well, we can get into the fashion business because we know how to market. I Let me tell you something. I do not know, and I have all women in my life. I have a wife. I have all daughters. I have one son, four daughters, one son. But they all think about fashion. It's more of an expression of themselves, not utilitarian. So if somebody like me, I can market consumer products, I can market electronics and toys, and that kind of stuff. I can even market SaaS products, right? Because there's a utilitarian aspect to all that. But when it comes to things like fashion or things that are emotional, it's more difficult if you don't know how that person thinks.
I think that it's amazing. So I have a co-founder with Prepper Pilots, and I don't pretend to know what stack we're using or how have I tried vibe coding features. Of course I have. Has it been an abject failure? Oh yeah, it has. But I have an amazing co-founder, Derek Simpson. He's a wizard. I mean, I think that science, given enough time to anyone, if it's advanced enough, comes off as wizardry, and that is what Derek Simpson is behind a
Right, right.
computer to me. It's wizardry, and he's able to take just thoughts and, hey, I know how this needs to work for pilots, and he's able to go boom. How about that? And I'm just like, that's
Yeah.
better than I imagined it. How did you do that?
Yeah.
Like, this is how it needs to work. And I can't imagine, you mentioned going into fashion. Like, I can't imagine us going like, we're going to change the fashion industry. He would he would still be able to take my ideas and turn them into actionable utilitarian, apps. But my ideas wouldn't help people in fashion because I would be like, okay, that's a square. We need to put it in here, and this is how it should work. And then they'd be like, but that doesn't really vibe with my, like that doesn't explain who I am anymore. And it's like, so I completely understand what you're getting at. And, every industry is a little bit different. And we absolutely got blessed to have two minds meet, that I know how it needs to work, and he knows how to make it work like that. And it's really been amazing to dig into that relationship. I've had people tell me that having a co-founder is a lot like getting married. And I will say that I never thought that I would get married after a 5-minute coffee, but I definitely proposed after a 5-minute coffee with Derek. It was just, look, our skill sets are so aligned that this is going to work. And it really has. And it's been an amazing journey. And I know I've probably done it 3 times now, but I have to shout out the networking effect of getting tied into your own
Sure.
startup community, wherever you are. You can be in Boston or Seattle or Louisville, Kentucky, in my instance. Being able to tie in with people and sit in a room where everybody is just thinking, what problem am I solving? Am I really solving it? And do people really want this? When you're in that room, you're in a room of people that you wish you were always in high school. You know, like you were that kid in class that was like, but why does it work that way? And you've never been in a room of just people that all thought the same way until you sit down at that startup sauna day or breakfast or coffee, whatever your community is doing to bring founders together. Until you go to that vibe code poker night with all founders and you're like, oh, these people are thinking about things the way I think about them. And it really elevates your experience, and it validates the way that you think to yourself. And sometimes that can be just as valuable as thinking that way in the first place.
Yeah, we do that with we do it online now with like a mastermind of young entrepreneurs, and same type of thing. You know, you need to have people you can bounce what you're thinking off of, and or listen to other people talk about what they've experienced or how they've done it, where they've been successful, where they haven't been successful. So I agree with you. You know, that whole peer review piece or peer information exchange is extremely important. There's a friend of mine, a guy named Vern Harnish. He's written two books, one, The Rockefeller Habits, the other one, Scaling Up. And he put together entrepreneurs organization, EO, YPO, you might have heard of some of them, WPO. He put them together 30 years ago. And part of it is every week or every once a month, I think, you have these groups that you form where you get together and you discuss problems in your business for that very reason. And the problems never leave the room, and everybody's there to try and help you solve that problem. Because you can't have the answer to everything. You just can't. It's impossible. And even I call people all the time because I've been doing this, for 25 years. I've been marketing products, and you would think that, let me call Phil. He can tell me how to market this. If it's something out of my league, I have people that I can call to say, look, you know, when we were doing fashion, it failed on my side, but before the whole thing, it kept going, but my part of it failed. When I said, this isn't working for us. We're not going to make you successful. So we brought in this woman, Janet, who we knew, who was great at this, and she wound up taking over like our part. So we just stepped out of it, and it continued with her because she could make it successful. She understood how the department stores worked. She understood how women made decisions. She understood what the designers needed to design for. So she really had it under control, and we just didn't. We weren't in that. In that mindset.
I love that ruthless accountability, and I think that's another thing that's so key to being a startup or entrepreneurship in general. When you fail, I think you go through most likely the first quarter of your life, or maybe at least the first 10 years of your life. When you fail, you go, no, I didn't. It was this, or it was not me. But when you start doing a startup and you start practicing that ruthless accountability, that's when you start to grow. You can't change something if you don't admit that it was the problem. And admitting you were the problem is the hardest thing to do. It's so hard to do that. You put so much on the line. You have skin in the game, and to turn around and say I'm the problem. Maybe Taylor Swift can do it, but it's hard for most people to say that.
Yeah.
But when you start saying that, you start fixing that part of you that is the problem, and you're able to solve these problems for other people in such a more efficient manner.
Well, again, I go back to my first startup, and I recognized it after about two or 3 years. I just didn't know what it was, right? I just knew I was the problem. And then when I sold the business, and I just said, I'm not one to give up, but I said to myself, this isn't working. It's not working for anybody. And, and I left, and that's how I came. I was in New York, and I moved down to Maryland. And I remember that we had this class in graduate, because I came down and went to graduate school, and we had this class on entrepreneurship, and I was listening to, you know, the professor, and they would have speakers come in, and then we had to come and present a business, and I chose to present the business that I just failed at, and I
Oh,
I wrote out the business plan and I did the whole thing. And everybody was like, wow, that's a great business. This is, I said, these numbers are real. It went from this to this and went from this. Why did it fail? You know, and I had to sit and admit up front, I said it failed because I could not lead these people correctly. My labor costs were out the roof. We were scaling sales, but not scaling profits. I was terrible at process management. Every day was chaos in the store. It was brutal. And I stood there, and this is about, a year and a half after the whole thing fell apart, maybe two. And the professor came to me afterwards. He said, I deal with a lot of entrepreneurs. I've dealt with some big ones, some small ones. He said, and they all come up here and they want you to think that they're like the greatest thing, even when they have a failure. It was a great failure. It was your greatest thing. And you're sitting there saying, I know exactly what I did that was wrong and when it was wrong, and I couldn't fix it, but I'm trying to fix it now. So, but I still carry that first failure with me every day because I still have a staff. I still have a team. And what I've learned to say is, I can't do that. That's why I hired you. You need to do that. And we're going to communicate. I'm going to keep you on track because I know what the strategy is, but you're the one who's going to get it done.
I mean, and that explains the name of the podcast. It's crunching your growth, and sometimes it feels like a crunch when you have to go up in front of a group and admit that it was you. You're crunching yourself or your own ego, maybe a little bit, but it's in pursuit of your own growth. So,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah. Well, we're almost out of time. We've got about 2.5 minutes. Any closing thoughts? Anything you want to say to people? If we have pilots out there, which I'm sure we probably do, or aspiring pilots or whatever, how can they get in touch with you? I guess they can go to properpilots.com.
That's absolutely it. If you want to learn more about, sorry, this is going to be a totally shameless plug,
Go
but
ahead.
thank you so much, Phil, and I've enjoyed our conversation so much.
Thanks.
Properpilots.com launches straight into our web app where you can start streamlining your flight school or your flight training or your flight instruction if that's where you're at in your career. If you want to learn a little bit more about Proper Pilots, instead of just jumping straight into our web app, you can go to properpilots.org, learn a little bit more. You can follow Proper Pilots on Instagram at Proper Pilots. You can follow me on Instagram. My name is Timothy Tweet. All I do is post about my baby that I pointed the wrong way. My baby that is Proper Pilots. I absolutely adore this. I think that it's changing the flight training industry. And I think that it's getting rid of historic barriers that keep people from becoming pilots. And I don't think there's anything in this world more freeing than becoming a pilot. So go out there, fly a little bit, get addicted to it, go to properpilots.com.
Yeah. So we'll have properpilots.com and properpilots.org. We'll put in the description, as well as the links to your social media. So everybody will be able to go and get them there, and they'll exist because once this show is over, it becomes evergreen content and it exists in about 20 different places. So hopefully people will contact you. So yeah, that's pretty much a wrap on today's episode of Crunching Your Growth. I think Timothy's story is proof that grit, vision, and adaptability can take you anywhere, even to the skies, from overcoming personal challenges to building a technology, changing aviation training. He's a reminder that entrepreneurship is about service, resilience, and always pushing forward. So thanks for joining us on Crunching Your Growth. And until next time, keep building, keep scaling, and keep believing in your vision.
Amazing. The sky was never the limit.
And thank you for taking the time to come on. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Phil.